Then we'll build our tabular model, and then we'll finish up with some really good resources to kind of help you continue your learning on analysis services tabular modeling. So there's some big differences between tabular and multidimensional. There are some similarities, but there's some really big differences between tabular and multidimensional. And if you're having a hard time reading all this, don't worry. I'm going to post all my content on my blog, so make sure you guys check that out. One of the big differences between tabular and multidimensional would be the query language. So in tabular, you're going to be using the DAX language to build your calculations, to build your measures. In multidimensional, you're going to be using MDX, multidimensional expression language. Also, the location of the data model. This is also a big one. SSAS is going to need to be installed in tabular mode for you to build a tabular model, whereas to build a multidimensional cube, you're going to need to install analysis services in multidimensional mode. And you can't run them together on the same instance of analysis services. You can't have tabular models living side by side with multidimensional. Now, it is possible to install an instance of analysis services in tabular mode and then another instance of analysis service in multidimensional mode and run those on the same server, which I have on my VM here that I'll be performing our webinar on. But if you're running analysis services in multidimensional and you want to get into building tabular models, you're going to need to install another instance of analysis services and make sure you check that little box to install tabular. Also, one of the really big differences that you'll see here is the usage of disparate data sources. Tabular is really designed with the fact in mind that you may have data sources that are all over the place. So you may have some that are in SQL, you may have some that are in a spreadsheet, you may have Oracle, you may have Teradata, you may have 500 different data sources, and they're just all over the place. And if you're looking for a way to bring those together in one place, tabular model is perfect for that. And for those of you who have experience with Power Pivot, you know what I'm talking about. So if you've built Power Pivot workbooks before, you're going to be able to pick up tabular modeling very quickly because it's very, very similar. If you're working with multidimensional, it's less suitable for those very separate data sources. Multidimensional works best when you have a star schema type data warehouse behind your cubes. But that's another big difference there. Data set size. If we're talking about terabytes of data, you definitely want to go with multidimensional. If we're talking about even up to gigs of data, tabular will work. Partitions work a little bit differently in tabular. We'll go over that when we get to the part about creating partitions in your tabular model. But when with multidimensional, the partitions work a little bit differently. We'll talk about that too. Many-to-many is built in the model in multidimensional. When we're building our many-to-many relationships in tabular, you're going to create that many-to-many functionality with DAX. If you have a need for complex calculations, such as scope assignments, such as name sets, different kinds of calculations like that, you probably want to go with multidimensional because you're not going to be able to do scope assignments or create name sets with tabular model. So you'll see those items listed here. Role-playing dimensions, that's another big one. Here, if you need role-playing dimensions, you're going to have to take a couple extra steps to create that in your tabular model. Analysis services kind of handles those role-playing dimensions in multidimensional databases and in cubes very easily, almost automatically. Ragged hierarchies, also not possible with tabular modeling at this point. They'll probably release something in the future to allow you to do that, but at this point, I believe ragged hierarchies are not possible with tabular modeling. And one thing I do want to point out before we go ahead and jump into our demo, if you currently have Power Pivot workbooks that you would like to basically transform into tabular models, it is very easy to convert your Power Pivot workbook straight to a tabular model. There's a little wizard that you can do to upgrade it to a tabular model, which is very cool. So if you spent some time developing your Power Pivot workbook and you're ready to upgrade that to tabular, very easy to do. Not really an upgrade path from tabular to multidimensional not possible. So if you've started work on a tabular model and you've decided, oh, I'm going to need a multidimensional for this solution, you're probably going to you just have to start from scratch that way. Okay. Also, one of the other things that I'll be posting up on the blog is this BISM decision matrix that can be used to help you decide if you want to go tabular or multidimensional. You can see here that it has a couple different categories like scalability, presentation options, security, model compatibility, data source flexibility, query language, time to develop. And basically you can come in here and you can weight these different things. So what do I care about the most? Do I want this to, you know, is data source flexibility the #1 thing that's important to me? Or presentation options. Do I want to have my as many presentation options as possible? You come in here and you weight these different categories, and then it'll rank them and kind of tell you which way you should go. So this is something Devin Knight created. I wish I could take credit for this because it's very, very cool. So I'll post this up on my blog so that way you can have a little bit of a helping hand there when trying to decide should I go tabular or multidimensional. One other thing that I will say when trying to decide between tabular and multidimensional is if you've gone through the differences between tabular and multidimensional and you're still having a hard time trying to decide and you're just like, you know, I don't know. You know, I could go either way. I really could go either way. If you just can't decide, I would say start with tabular and go from there. And the reason I say this is because time to develop a tabular model is going to be much less than developing a multidimensional model. So if you get into developing your tabular model, chances are you'll probably figure out much more quickly that you need to go to multidimensional, whereas if you had started with multidimensional, it's probably going to take you a longer time before you figure out that you should have gone with tabular. So I would say if you really just can't decide, start with tabular. Probably only get a few days into the effort, maybe even less, before you figure out we should go with multidimensional. Okay, so let's start building our tabular model. So got a lot here to cover. I hope that we can do this pretty quickly. You guys should be seeing my Visual Studio's screen. So I'm going to start with creating a brand new tabular project. So I'm just going to go to File, New, Project, and make sure I've got Analysis Services. All right, cool. So the one thing I want to point out here is this option here, Import from Power Pivot. This is what I was talking about earlier.